We're all editors for different publications at Endeavor Business Media, and we just got back from CES and saw all sorts of neat stuff. So, Kayla, what was the most interesting thing you saw at CES?
Well, first, let me introduce myself. I'm Kay Nadler. I represent our P10 magazine, Professional Tools and Equipment News. The most interesting thing I thought with the Hyundai Mobis Mobian vehicle was pretty interesting. It's equipped with what the company calls e-corner system motion technology that essentially allows the EV to crab walk. So not only can it drive like normal, but it can also move laterally and diagonally and pivot turn. And so I thought that was pretty interesting.
Paul, what did you say?
Well, hey, thanks, Bill. I'm Paul Rothman. I'm the editor of Security Business Magazine and SecurityInfoWatch.com. And really, I thought the most interesting thing that I saw, and not as sexy as flying cars or anything like that, but it was a AI-based language translation model that was being applied to call centers. And in the security industry, really interestingly, these emergency call centers don't really have an option when someone calls and is talking in Portuguese or some other language that the operator doesn't understand. So this technology plugs right into the infrastructure of the call center and real time translates as the person's talking. And so when they talk in their language, I hear it in English and get a translation on a video board, and then I can talk back in English and they hear it in their language. So you could see how valuable this would be in an emergency situation or an alarm situation where somebody's calling an alarm center and they're panicked and they need a response right away, or the operator needs a response in order to send the police or something like that. I thought this was a really interesting technology. And beyond that use case, we discovered that we could use this technology could possibly be used for biometric voice authentication in 150 different languages. By the way, the name of the company is One Meta, and the name of the product is Verbum Call. You could use this to biometrically authenticate people's voices in an access control setting, like say it is on a pedestal in front of a building, in front of a locked door, and it needs you to say something in order to authenticate to open the door. Well, if you don't speak the language, it's going to be more difficult to say what the key phrase is. But if you could plug this in and kind of make that same phrase over 150 different languages, then it really enables, opens up a world of different opportunities for security, and really kind of blew me away.
Excellent. Dave, how about you? What did you like?
Hey, Bill. Sure. I'm David Maliniak. I'm the executive editor of Microwaves and RF. One of the most interesting things I saw was a demo at the suite of the Bluetooth Special Interest Group, or SIG, something that they call Auracast. It's kind of a really interesting thing. They took you through a demo that was, for lack of a better purpose, simulation of an airport. So what Auracast is going to do is you'll have an app on your phone, and with your whatever earbuds you use, you'll have a menu of options to select from. You can listen to your gate announcements if you want to. Those TV screens in the terminal that are always silent, you can listen to the audio on TV. You can go to the sports bar and listen to the audio. You can listen to say you're flying with a coworker, you can listen to their laptop or their audio from their phone. It's a really interesting model for sharing audio and just making a space much more friendly from an RF point of view.
Okay. Well, I'm Bill Wong with Electronic Design, and I saw some interesting things with respect to radar. NXP and Ambarella actually had some radar that essentially provides a 3D imaging system, but they're using a lot less in terms of the number of antennas. One of the challenges that has been addressed in the past is you needed a lot of antennas, even though it's on a very small array, to get that 3D information out. They're doing it by essentially spreading out the antennas and using fewer of them, and essentially analyzing them in a MIMO essentially type approach to get it the kind of resolution that essentially matches the resolution people are seeing on the optical cameras. And of course, radar doesn't have the problems that you do with optics. They work at night, they work in the rain, all sorts of other neat things. So that's what I saw. So moving on to finding out what you thought was really interesting. Paul, what did you find interesting this time around?
Well, actually, the question really is what do you need to know that came out of this show, right? And for me, it was the Wi-Fi Halo standard, which has it was actually introduced back in 2017 by the IEEE, and Wi-Fi Alliance has kind of coined Wi-Fi Halo as the name of the certification for products that conform to this new Wi-Fi standard. And it is really, really incredible. And at CES, we finally saw the first products that are actually leveraging this new standard. So Wi-Fi Halo technology can enable easy connectivity for low power devices like sensors and cameras and personal wearables and things like that. And why does it matter? Well, if you're a homeowner and you've ever dealt with a video doorbell that will not connect to your Wi-Fi because your Wi-Fi is too far away, this is the solve for that problem. It can extend the range of Wi-Fi to almost, like, one company can extend it to 1.5 miles, which is unbelievable. You can have a hub in your house, and 1.5 miles away, you can have a camera that's still working. So you can imagine that this would really benefit large areas such as, like a farm. Imagine a farm where you want to put cameras on the corners of the perimeter to watch what's happening, or maybe a camera at your mailbox, way down, there. Well, it'll work all with, it all will work with a battery powered wireless cameras. Wi-Fi Halo can penetrate walls and barriers, and it works in really noisy environments. So it's ideal for parking garages, smart city deployments of cameras, and things like that. Really incredible technology that is not proprietary, but there's a company called Morse Micro who I met with who makes the system on chip for Wi-Fi Halo. And so that chip will go into the camera or into the different devices to enable this connectivity that's never been seen before. And they're bringing the chip to market, and they've actually, at CES, several companies introduced new products that were based on this Wi-Fi Halo technology. Abode had a new edge camera for smart homes, and ViewSec had 3 different kinds of cameras: outdoor bullets, outdoor domes, and indoor Wi-Fi cameras. Primex had a Buzz Halo video doorbell, and EdgeCore Networks had a Wi-Fi Halo router that you could deploy. And Zetify, interesting, had something called Zeti Rover, which is something you mount on a vehicle specifically on farm machinery to extend Wi-Fi across an entire farm. So really interesting stuff, and something that could impact basically everybody who's watching this, who has Wi-Fi issues in their home or Wi-Fi issues at their business or something like that.
The must-see that I noticed everyone was kind of flocking around was X-Pan Aero's flying car. That was something that I've never seen before, and like I said, judging by the crowd that was always seemed to be around the car, I wasn't the only one. We've seen flying vehicles before on the CES show, so it's not too unusual, but what made this one stand out was that it actually transformed. So it started out as a sleek, sporty looking car that drives like normal on the road. You wouldn't think anything about it. But then in a matter of 60 seconds, drone-like propellers unfold from the body of the vehicle, and it's ready to take flight. Of course, at a low altitude, but it seemed pretty amazing and something that I haven't seen before.
Well, Dave, what did you have in your must-see list?
Well, in my narrow purview of RF and microwave, sometimes it gets down to interesting components. The Knowles folks, who most people know for their their microacoustic microphones and speakers. They have an interesting digital voice vibration sensor that has a whole bunch of different use cases, medical, automotive, all kinds of things, smart appliances, you can washing machines. And the thing, like one thing it did, they can embed this sensor within, and they had an actual demo of this within a car door. You're outside your car. You want to tell your car to open its door. This sensor will pick up your voice. It cleans it up substantially, and they had demos that show how well they can filter out the high and low pass parts of the signal, and it worked amazingly well. It was really quite an interesting little component. So it's one of those things that you find embedded in larger systems. It's not something that you're not necessarily going to know is there, but if it is there, you'd appreciate it.
Neat. Well, I saw a lot of robots at CES, everything from dogs that were doing dances and jumping and all sorts of neat things like that. But there was one that sort of stood out that I saw. It was from Enchanted Tools. And this robot is essentially sitting on a ball, so it can essentially move in any direction. But the thing that really got me, in addition to the fact that it actually, was articulated, it's two arms to pick things up, was its face. And what they did is, instead of having, a mouth move or anything like that, they actually have a plastic face on the front, but they project an image from the back, essentially the face from the back, so they can animate it and get it to do all this expression that you would normally have to have very sophisticated biomechanical support for. And it does a very effective job. So I'm very interested to see how that thing fares in the future. So there were a lot of trends that have been observed over at CES, and I was going to see what everybody else might have seen along the way that they think has been increasing or changing and will be of interest to everybody in 2024. So Dave, why don't you lead us off in that?
This wasn't so much a thing that I saw, but it was a very interesting meeting that I had with some high-level folks at Rohde and Schwartz, who we know as a leading vendor in the test and measurement space, and specifically in the automotive market, connectivity being so important to automotive. So they were speaking to me about the trends that they're seeing, for instance, a lot more use we'll see in coming years of non-terrestrial networks, meaning satellite networks, mostly for emergency calls. A lot more use of 5G reduced capability chipsets, and they're looking forward to 4D imaging radar for ADAS. And by the way, we're used to seeing 77 gigahertz frequencies for radar. That's going to bump up to 130 gigahertz in coming years. And that's going to solve a lot of interference issues. And it's also going to displace LiDAR in a lot of those applications. Rohde also had an interesting demo of a production test system for electric and hybrid vehicle batteries. There's a lot of they're replacing wires in these battery packs. There's a lot of wireless communication between the batteries now, as opposed to wiring, which reduces the weight in the vehicle. And so they've recalibrated their production level test to account for that wireless capability.
Okay. Kayla, what trends do you see?
Yes. Well, the hot topic at the show was AI. AI was everywhere. It seems to be the craze and the buzzword surrounding all industries, and there's no doubt that it's entering the automotive sector, from AI-powered dashboards to companies implementing it within their own manufacturing and business processes. It was everywhere. Mercedes-Benz unveiled an EV with an AI-powered dashboard. Volkswagen is integrating Chat GPT into their vehicles first quarter. So it's going to be interesting to see what AI is going to bring to the table next year at CES.
Okay. Paul, how about you?
I'm piggybacking right on that because AI is my theme as well. AI on the edge, which is interesting because, I mean, for somebody like me who's covering CES for an entire industry and trying to stay very narrowly focused on that. It's nice to see that AI is bleeding into all these other, markets as well. But I noticed that, when I go to a security trade show and we talk about AI, generally it's video analysis, looking at things that happen on, bags left behind and things like that. They're using AI for video analytics, basically. But very interestingly, saw so many more applications of AI here at CES that it was just incredible. I alluded to the language model for the call centers. That was AI driven. I saw a video doorbell with generative AI incorporated into the device. So when you rang the doorbell and nobody's home, it can carry on a conversation with the person, tell them, hey, please leave the package over there, or, hey, call the police because my house is on fire, like all these different interesting ways that the generative AI would respond to certain queries. Presence and fall detection solutions, with radar, ultrasonic, ultra wideband, all powered by AI to understand who's in a room, what's happening in a room, if somebody has fallen, if somebody is there, those sort of things, heartbeat monitoring, all these different incredible applications of it. Of course, computer network and cybersecurity defense powered by AI, which I guess is Skynet. We got to be careful there. And, of course, LiDAR-based perimeter security, people counting, sensors and detection, gunshot detection technology, all, robotics, as Bill mentioned, all powered by AI. So it's really interesting to see the way that it's being brought to bear on the market in so many different ways and so many different technologies.
Well, I'm going to wrap it up with one of the trends I saw, which was essentially mixed reality, which includes augmented reality and virtual reality. And there was an announcement that Qualcomm made about their Snapdragon XR2 Plus, which is going to up the resolution to 4K per eye. Now, I actually brought a Quest 3 that I picked up recently, which has a resolution on the order of 2K per eye. And I was on the airplane, essentially watching large screen movies. But what is really interesting is things like corporate use, where you're going to be dealing with digital twins. And that's actually one area where everybody's talking about AI just a minute ago, where it's going to make a big difference in AR and VR, because now you can interact with the device, probably with voice or with pointing and things of that nature, that are going to be much quicker in terms of being able to manipulate the virtual environment. So anyway, I want to thank all our editors for filling us in on what they saw over at CES, and definitely check out all their websites, because there are a lot more articles, a lot more videos covering additional topics that we weren't able to touch on here. Thanks very much, everybody.